Welcome to the June 15th meeting of the Sunset Beach Environmental Resource Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we can stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
Our first order is to amend or approve the draft agenda. Are there any amendments anyone wishes to be made? Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion we approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Who's pinch hitting for Steve?
He's watching.
We will enter.
Oh, Steve's watching. Okay.
Steve's watching.
Oh, okay. Okay.
This is Stephen
Steve.
Hines. He's the new member of the ERC appointed by the board, by the town council. And we'll get to that in a little bit. We have no public attendance, so there's no comments. The next item is the meeting minutes of May 18th. These were not provided with the draft agenda. We can either discuss the minutes today, or we can move to postpone that to next month.
Uh,
And Mr. Chairman, I want to make a point that I know we have two new members. One of them is not here today, but even though that Mr. Hines was not in attendance for the previous meetings, he still can vote on the minutes, even though he was not here. Just wanted to make sure that is clear.
Okay.
He can vote.
He can.
Okay.
I mean, he wasn't a part of them or anything like that. Because he is a member, he can vote for them. So I don't want him to think he has to reprieve himself or anything like that. But he does have power to vote on that.
I
Okay.
just printed these out, Mr. Chairman. I have not had a chance to look at them. I feel they're probably okay, but whatever the pleasure of the board is, I'm fine with.
I do have one change, Steve, and it's about Don Egert here.
Well, do we want
Sorry.
to address the meeting minutes today, or do we want to do that next month? I mean, most of us have just seen these recently, so.
Mhm.
Well, I move they be deferred to our next meeting.
Is there a second?
I second. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that'll be moved to next month. I would suggest if you have comments to feed to Steve, that you mark it up and send him a copy of it. Or however you want to communicate that.
I have a question, and this can be addressed to question for Candace and John, and maybe help Steve out here. I know that the signature is not on this. That's something that will be needed by the secretary and the chairman. Candace, is that something you created or can forward on to Steve to help him out at the bottom of the minutes?
Well, he does have.
Okay, I didn't know if you created anything special. I'll run this by Lisa to make sure there's not anything kind of
I think what I did
official or
was
whatever.
copy that from the minutes that Don had.
Yeah, I did that. And I probably
And then
got
I
it
had
from
also
somebody.
looked at the old meetings from when
Okay.
Pete Larkin was still here.
As far as I know, the town has no standard format for meeting minutes.
Well,
Correct, yeah,
And-
but there might be a standard for the signature and for the chairman and the secretary.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure
Okay.
that we are at least official or somewhat official on that. So I might be reaching out to Candace or Don to just kind of get, if you have an old Word PDF or something like that that I convert back to a Word document. that'd be great.
I'll say I've looked at a lot of minutes over the years. Typically, signatures are not included.
Okay, all right, that's
I
fine.
think he's just asking, did we have a template that
No.
we used? And I didn't, which was one
No,
of my
I
issues. I
didn't.
couldn't create one in
Okay.
Apple very
Right.
easily.
I'll work on that in the next
Yeah.
month just to make sure
Okay.
Steve is equipped with all the tools that he needs to
Okay.
do secretary.
Every secretary we've had has
Different.
had their own
Okay.
custom version of it. and that's fine. But
Yeah.
But if you could create a template, it might help the next,
yeah, if there is a
might help Steve or
standard,
the next person.
I think when the minutes are done by the town staff, they all follow the same format. And if we
Correct.
wanted to standardize that, that would probably be a help
Okay.
to anybody,
Well,
but maybe not. Okay, next item is introduction of new members. Mila Millman cannot be with us today. She's out of town. We have Steve Hines. Welcome.
Welcome.
Maybe you could introduce yourself, and then we'll go around and introduce ourselves to you.
All right. Well, I've been here for a couple of years. Came down from New York. Last 40 years of basically my working life were spent on Long Island. I worked for the Department of Environmental Conservation there. I was a marine fishery manager for the last 11 years of my career. Prior to that, I did do some work with artificial reefs and fishing access. So these are some areas, that I know are of interest around here. The last 14 years of my career, including the last 3 years after I retired from the state, I was I had a seat on the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council,
cool.
which is, it's a quasi-governmental body that's set up by federal law and operates under parliamentary procedures and in public meetings, well attended, 21 members of the council. It was quite an experience. I really enjoyed that. So I'm kind of used to this environment where you have a microphone that you're working with constantly, and it's was very rewarding work. It was the best part of my career, anyways. So now I'm here in Sunset Beach. I have a lot of interests here. As far as the environment, I'm a golfer, and you like that environment, but I'm also a fisherman, and I really have a strong interest in good water quality. The fisheries, the oyster reefs. I'm a little disappointed that there's the waters around here are closed to harvest. That doesn't speak well for our water quality. But at any rate, I'm looking forward to working with this body.
Welcome. I mean, obviously your background will add a lot of value to what we're doing. We look forward to that. Rich, you want to introduce yourself to Steve?
First, let me say, yeah, we may seem a little jagged here compared to a 21-member council.
That's quite all right.
Rich Back, live at Sea Trail for the last year and a half. An environmentalist, conservationist. I don't fish. I eat fish. Been on the committee, I guess, 8 months or so. Yes, 7 or 8 months, and it's been good. We've been effective, I think, and they've welcomed me. So welcome.
Thank
you. My background is primarily in the power generation industry. I was in the service side of it with General Electric Company for most of my career, and then I went to work for the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company before they retired me, and then I was into consulting for a while, project management consulting with industrial processes and manufacturing processes. Been in Sunset Beach for 7.5 years. We moved here from Baltimore, Maryland, and I have a strong interest in the environment, and with the climate change and all of the things that are arising from that, my background in power generation and environmental compliance seemed to be a good fit. So I've enjoyed doing what we're doing.
I'm Don Eggert. I grew up in Indiana. Been here since 1985. Came to the county for a job with the county planning department. And my last job was long-range transportation planning for a regional council based in Wilmington. Retired in 2013, Labor Day 2013, so 9 years. My big thing is recycling. I am pretty avid recycler, and I guess we'll get into that a little bit. Stephen and I are on a two-person committee right now, I guess.
Subcommittee.
Subcommittee, I guess. And I feel like, we're still a fairly new committee, that we're gaining some traction on a lot of different things, but still got a ways to go. So that's my short version.
I'm Candace Sieben. I've been down here for about 6 years, and I'm a retired physician, so I was really interested in the public health aspects of the environment, which makes you very interested in water quality. So I get that part. I lived in Jamaica Estates on Long Island for several years, so you're probably pretty familiar
Gosh,
with
they're
that.
everywhere.
But I can see where, the fisheries and things are so important in that area. So I'm really pleased you're here.
Thank you.
And by the way, when I worked for the county and with the Cape Fear Council of Governments, I was involved in their Coastal Area Management Act, CAMA stuff here for a while. Know a good bit about it. I understand the intent and purpose of it. By the way, I live on Sea Trail. Not Sea Trail. Where do I live? Windfall off Old Georgetown Road. Thank you.
Chad?
My name is Chad Stradumsky. I'm the planning director here for the town of Sunset Beach. I will be your staff liaison for everything. I'll get you my contact information before we leave today. If you have any questions, door's always open. But basically, I am the buffer between this board and staff. I also serve with the planning board, board of adjustments, and town council to an extent. So, but welcome.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I just wonder if there's other staff other than Chad. He's the one I see at the meetings all the time.
Yeah,
okay.
so we have Katie, who is our deputy clerk. She actually clerks the council meetings, the planning board meetings, board of adjustment. Board of adjustments only meets when they have to, and then this is the board that only self clerks their own minutes. And Lisa Anglin is our town administrator. You'll see her from time to time, especially when we're dealing with procedural issues, or if there's a question, or especially when we'll get into the resiliency stuff. She's pretty hands-on involved with that, along with Dustin Graham, our public works director. Carrie White is our building inspector, I can go around and after today's meeting and introduce you to a few of those. We do have some people out that are sick and stuff like that, but other than that, got a good staff here.
We have an excellent staff. There are two members of the committee that aren't here today. Steve Levine has been a member for as long as Rich has been. And Steve is away on family business. And Mila Millman is out of town. She's newly appointed also. And as far as I know and believe, they're both watching the meeting on live stream. So you'll get to meet them next month.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay. Next item is old business. First item is the review of the Resilient Coastal Community Program. Chad, you want to start that?
Yeah, I'll introduce this. This is kind of an overview of where we're at last meeting with phases 1 and 2. We have completed phases 1 and 2, the resiliency coastal program put on by the North Carolina Division of Equality or Water DENR, Division of Natural Resources. There we go. Maybe my brain will start thinking this morning. They put on a first time ever new program for resiliency, and it's for coastal communities for resiliency of natural disasters. So we have the risk of vulnerability assessment plan that's been adopted by and provided to us by Moffitt Nickel, the contractor that was assigned to us for phases 1 and 2. That got started about August, September of last year and carried through January, February of this year. That was adopted by DENR and closed out. Steve, I can get you the documentation for that as well. Phase 3, which we are currently in, we are working on which is the engineering cost part of it, and there are grants for that. So we have currently submitted in, John, I think, what is it, 2 projects?
2 projects,
So
yes.
2 projects out of the 11 that was created kind of for us and with us through phases 1 and 2. So we have contracted with McGill, which the town has an ongoing contract with McGill Engineering to help work with submitting those grants up to $45,000 potentially for each project on average. Those submittals have already been done. I think the deadline was this past Friday. John Corbett, who was a council member, John Farrell, which is our ERC chair, and Pete Larkin is our planning board chair. Currently work with staff as a 3-member team, potentially with the extension of this board at times to move forward and discuss with staff projects to move forward with that. I'll let John kind of explain what the 2 project submittals are. But phase 3 is for the engineering cost grant for that. So the grant would be up to on average $45,000 per project. McGill and Associates are currently working on that. And again, all the grant is to do is the offset the engineering costs for the design of the project. Phase 4, which, John, correct me if I'm wrong, has not been really laid out quite yet.
No, well, that depends on phase 3.
Correct. So phase 4 will be taking that engineering project and then putting it actually into on the ground. And then there will be a grant procedure program for those as well. So each phase gets more selective of what's going to come out there. I'm assuming the money will stay the same or get larger. I'm not 100% sure. We haven't seen the kind of the numbers for phase 4 yet. But currently we are in phase 3. We have submitted 2 proposals for 2 grants, each separate. So each grant can be awarded up to $45,000 depending on what's submitted. It's in a competition grant process. And I'll turn it back over to John, who can be a little bit more specific about the 2 projects that were submitted.
Okay, thank you, Chad. First of all, I'd like to talk about the outcome of phases 1 and 2. I've sent each one of you copies of files with information about the phase 1 and 2 work products. And if there are any questions or if we have to have some discussion about those, we can do that here this morning. The outcome of that was what's considered by the state to be a resilience strategy for Sunset Beach. And that's a spreadsheet of 11 programs, 11 projects that have been identified by the previous community action team. And from that list of 11, 2 projects were selected by the town, by the action team, to go to application for grants. One of those projects is at the intersection of North Shores Drive and 40th Street on the island. There is, that's a location of flooding during high levels of high water levels, either storm surge or I didn't get out to see the king tides this week yet, but I imagine the water was pretty close up to the road there, if not over it. The other project that was submitted is for cleanup of the wastewater, of the stormwater collected along the island. Town staff has identified a technology called the SAFL baffles. And the acronym is spoken of as the SAFL baffles. And what it is it's a screening device that goes at the discharge of the stormwater drains into the canals that knocks down all the solid material, not all the solid, but a high percentage of the solid materials that get that wind up in the stormwater system, and keeps them from going out into the channels and into the marshes. This is something that's been looked at by staff for a long time, and this seemed to be in line with the program objectives. So the application was submitted to do the engineering for SAFL baffle applications across the island. I think there's 11, maybe 13 different locations where these baffles would be put in.
So John, does it take the like garbage, plastics, things like that may end up in the stormwater drainage? It takes that out, or what are they filtering out?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what it does.
Okay.
It's a big, the way I look at it, it's like a big septic tank.
Mhm.
You have a discharge into a larger volume area.
Mhm.
There is a vertical baffle plate in there with a whole bunch of holes in it, screen. I mean, they're not tiny holes, they're bigger holes. The water goes through it, the velocity drops down, all the big solids in there fall to the bottom, and periodically they come
clean that out.
around with a vacuum truck and clean it out.
Okay.
And
Just to be clear, septic tank of rainwater and stuff floating down the street. Not,
septic tank of stormwater, not sewer.
just want to
Not
be on the
sanitation.
record for that.
Not a sanitary canal.
Oh, there.
But no, that's great to keep that stuff out of the water and out is great.
One of the things I recall, John, when we had the public works director before us at least a year ago talked about this area behind the town hall here, how poorly drained some of that is, because it's an older area and the ditches are filled up with stuff. And I'd made the comment that when I was working for the Census Bureau, trying to track down folks that had not filed their census form a couple years ago, how bad the mosquitoes were over there. And I don't know if that situation is any better or not, or has that been addressed.
Well, the town has a long-range stormwater plan, management plan.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that plan is cleaning out those
Yeah,
drainage ditches.
that people throw stuff in. Yeah,
And they've made great progress in doing it.
good,
Matt's met with us before and
Uh-huh.
talked about the progress they've made in
Right.
cleaning
good.
that out.
Yeah,
The other part of that are the retention ponds where that water runs into.
right.
And that was actually one of those retention ponds was considered as a project for the grant application.
Uh-huh.
But the engineer advised us that
Wait,
these other ones were better ones.
right.
So,
Is that one of the 11? The retention ponds, is it one of the 11?
no,
yeah.
So it didn't even make it into the top.
well, just a little background. The 11 projects were the outcome of the community action team
Right.
talking to staff, driving around town, looking at all of the areas of risk for storm problems.
Right.
And we put together a big inventory
Right.
of projects.
Yeah.
And then that was filtered down into that spreadsheet of 11 items.
Mhm.
After that was done, and talking to staff and then looking at it again, there have been a lot of other places that have been identified as things that should be tracked also.
Right.
So the actual inventory of risk sites is bigger than that 11.
Right.
Okay.
The other thing that will help John is inform them that this is more of a nature, kind of a hybrid
Right.
infrastructure, nature-based grant program. And a lot of the ones that we identified as more of a infrastructure
Right.
and infrastructure ones that we're finding into have a lot more hoops to jump through on the long-term basis than the short-term. For example, the biggest one is the canal, the causeway from the base of the bridge to the island. So at least a quarter of a mile right there where you have vulnerability on both sides of that. The other thing that really works with us and against us is it's NZDOT road. So, and then the undertaking of actually raising that up, making it more supportive, actually is bigger than a lot of other things that we looked at. But we also wanted to work. We worked with McGill to choose 2 projects that would actually be very competitive as well. And working with them and staff and the Public Works Department, identified these 2 as the Saffle Baffles and the other project as being competitive and hopefully can get funded, or both of them hopefully funded, so they can move forward.
All the work products from phase 1 and 2 are on the website, on the town website.
I wanted to mention, John, you mentioned the king tide. My wife and I were over to Park Sunday night, I think, and the tide was extremely high, probably as high as I've ever seen it over there. This is about 7 o'clock or so, really high.
Right.
And we went over there last night and walked the dog and so forth. Mosquitoes were bad, which they're usually not, but they were out there last night looking for me.
Chad, I don't know if the grant applications have been put on the website yet or not, but we'll have to ask that they be put there. So the program is that right now the applications were filed. By the end of June, the DCM has committed to making selections of their projects. Basically, they've been given a certain amount of money, and if they split it up into $45,000 increments, then all of the communities that are in the coastal region will be eligible to receive 1 grant. We don't know if everybody has submitted grants or not, and we don't know what the requested amount of money is. One of our grants is a little over that target. The other grant is almost twice that target. So we don't know how that's going to be judged by the DCM. Now, when those grants are made, and I think we can expect to receive at least 1 grant, then the program moves into the engineering phase, where the engineering firm, well, there's about a month of time allocated to contracting between the town and the DCM, and then there'll be the beginning of work. And the outcome of that work will be an engineering plan ready to go to contract to perform the work. So the grant money will cover the engineering work, and then we have to go out and find more grants to actually do the project. And one part of phase 3 is that the state will provide all the communities with places to go to try to get grants. They don't have the money to pay for all the work, but there are a lot of grant programs out there where we have to go out and find the money or decide to do it ourselves. Right? So right now we're waiting for a decision about our grant applications, and we have to go through an engineering phase, and then we have to look at how to implement that, how to do the construction. Now, in the process here, council has decided that they want to have the Environmental Resource Committee become part of the community action team, and they'll take that burden off the planning board, who have a very full plate with the with
The
what,
UDO rewrite.
with what they're doing to rewrite the town ordinances. So part of what we have to look at is what can we do to continue to move this program forward. Phase 3, the engineering work and the actual engineering work products are over our heads.
Sure.
And when we get into phase 4, the actual implementation, actual construction of those projects, that'll be done by town staff and by contractors. But we've got a resilience strategy that was the outcome of phase 1 and 2. And my thought is that we should continue to develop that resilience strategy, that we should refine the projects that are on it, adding to them where appropriate, and prioritizing them so that we can advise town council on the status of what's been done and what we think are the priorities going forward. And we have to do that, of course, in collaboration with staff. We can't make all those judgments ourselves. But there's an enormous amount of information in the public domain right now about climate change. You have information about the causes of climate change, and you have information about the effects of climate change. We can't really do much at a local level here about the causes, but we can evaluate the impacts that it will have and decide or make recommendations about what should be done to mitigate those impacts. And Chad commented about the nature-based solutions. The phase 3 program is really looking primarily at nature-based projects. There are a lot of infrastructure projects. Probably the highest priority one is the causeway. And Lisa has had meetings with the DOT to talk about doing a study on what can be done to deal with the causeway and the forecasted sea level rises that occur. So we'll see what the DOT comes back with on that.
I know my last job as long-range planner for highway transportation, DOT has a very vigorous hydrology element that they look at water management and runoff from roads and where it goes. So they hopefully will give the town some advice, direction. This is an unusual situation here, though, but hopefully that something good will come out of that.
I don't know how many people recognized it, but I think it was when Hurricane Isaias came through. We were on the edge of the eye of the storm.
Uh-huh.
Oak Island got hit really hard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the sea level rise or the surge from that
Right.
storm actually washed some of the stones along the edge of the road up over the road.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's
Yeah.
not only that, but the pollutants that a heavy rain will wash off the road into the ditches. You know, it's what they call non-point sources too. Is coming tough not to crack. Because I mean, there's a lot to that. I guess the point I'm trying to make.
right.
Yeah.
But based on my engineering background and how I've been trained to look at things, that was a near miss for Sunset Beach.
Oh yeah.
So towns recognized it, and they're doing the studies and trying to bring the expertise to make plans to deal with it.
And hopefully find an answer before we have another
Yeah.
serious storm.
Well, for some reason, the way Sunset Beach is located, the big things tend to go around us.
Don't count your chickens just yet. We've had.
No, I know that. But
But when
Hugo.
when all the models look at the trajectories for hurricanes, you're right, we're blessed. They're either closer to the mountains or they're a little bit out over the ocean and tend to go past us.
They normally
Well-
go up right up the Cape Fear River.
Yeah.
It's just that this end of the county, the wind swirl's a little bit different than it does New Hanover and Brunswick, where you, or north end of Brunswick, where you get a little bit of the more swirling type winds that like to touch down on things and wreak more havoc than
So you used the word normally.
normal.
Yeah, there is no more normally.
Oh, I know.
You know, with
Yeah.
this climate change, you
Yeah.
cannot base anything on the past.
Historically,
Historically. Okay.
historically,
Yeah.
they like to ride right up the Cape Fear River or just north of that and create that different swirl of wind down here where you get a little bit more severe weather, I guess, in the instance of tornadoes down here than you do most other places in the county. Now, Hugo, Lisa's told me about Hugo where it hit, landed between here and Charleston. That's the one that really brought that northeast
Yeah.
quadrant through here and really wreaked some havoc. So, historically, when you say that, John, that's what you're talking about, where normally that northeast quadrant stays north end of Brunswick, New Hanover, Pender, up into Onslow, where this end normally kind of tends to stay away from it, but unless it hits more Georgetown south, and that puts us right in the middle of the most severe part of that storm, a storm like that.
I was here when Hugo came in. I have some very unfond memories of it. Also, Floyd in '99, I was town planner in Oak Island. Have some very unfond memories of that too.
Mm-hmm.
That hit a pretty hard lick on Oak Island.
Well,
Anyway,
we've got to prepare for the worst,
yeah,
hope for the best.
yeah.
Do you have copy? I know I got the files, and I appreciate that you sent them showing the RCCP work and the projects that were selected. Is there another file that would include the other things that staff and the town has identified? You said there's several other projects that didn't fall in those 11, but that were important.
We need to update the records. Okay. The resilience strategy that was approved by the DCM is a living document and can be updated. I've got these maps that I created.
He's for.
Can you pass them down?
I think I sent you
Oh,
Got one
a
already.
file of this.
Mhm.
This is done in Google Maps, and I just marked locations of a lot of different locations of vulnerability. And all of the items on the spreadsheet are on here, but there's quite a few more. So, and I haven't had a chance to go back to the spreadsheet and bring it up to date yet.
So what's the key? White, yellow, or red? I mean, I see red, yellow, and green. So green is go, I assume.
Okay, the red locations are the locations of the grant requests.
Okay. That's an emergency.
The red to the left of the others is at 40th Street and North Shore Drive. The four reds on the right side are the
Saffel baffles.
Saffel baffle locations, and that's only four of them. There's quite a few more places. The greens out at the end of the island, that's Cove Point. That's private land. They have their own issues out there. The greens in the upper right area of the map are along the Calabash River as it comes down from the north and goes through two areas that are ETJ areas. That's private land. Then you get down into, you follow the Calabash River along, you've got a couple of places in Sea Trail, and then you get down to the dam at the end of, I think it's called Medford Lake. And that's privately owned also. And then the Calabash winds through the marsh and goes out into the river. The bridge over the Calabash River above the 179B sign, I think we're all aware that that bridge is being rebuilt by the DOT. That's work that should begin next year. They're going to raise that bridge up, I believe, 9 feet to give it more room for storm surge and to better provide better evacuation and emergency access into the area. The green areas to the left of that are, those are in the town of Calabash, but they directly affect the Sunset Beach community along the waterway. There's 2 places down closer to the waterway marked in yellow that are risks for the Sunset Beach residents living down there. Then you come back up along the Intercoastal Waterway and you have a number of locations there where flooding and storm surge will affect the infrastructure. Shoreline Drive West, the Shoreline Drive East, and all the creeks and the waterways that go in and out of the ICW are locations where very high levels of storm surge can do a lot of damage and affect a lot of people. So, Don, to your point earlier about the
Over here.
stormwater
Yeah.
system, those were things that were discussed when we talked about the Phase 3 applications. And they are areas that need to be looked at for the future. A lot of what we need to do is evaluate experience and decide what we want to do or
I
what
just-
we recommend be done.
I just remember the mosquitoes back there.
So, yeah, there's a nature-based solution for that also, because we don't need to spray for mosquitoes every time someone gets stung, I think. That's my opinion.
Yes. But that's the course of action the town follows when people complain about mosquitoes. So if we can come up with a better way, then we can talk about that. But the 2 infrastructure projects, in my judgment, that affect the most people most seriously are the waterway from the bridge to the island and the bridge over the Calabash River. If those get flooded out, that will strand a lot of people. And so those are things that need to be studied and worked on and improvements made on. So this is a starting point. And Candace, to your point, we need to take the list of projects, we need to update it, we need to prioritize it, and then we need to try to find the best practices to improve those things.
Okay.
And then I think that's the greatest value the ERC can add to the town. And if anybody
I
else
think it's
has other
important.
ideas,
I think it's really important to keep looking at it. You're right. And those things may change with time. You know, you have one more big storm come through and these points could look completely different depending what gets hit.
Well, it's interesting that most damage from a hurricane is from flooding, not the beachfront damage. We see that on TV, but in actuality, the flooding creates more damage from hurricanes in terms of dollar amount. A lot of water. some cases 15, 20 inches.
1 year after Hurricane Sandy hit New Jersey,
Yeah.
we went over and we visited the island.
Yeah.
And you're right, Don,
Yeah.
the most damage was done over there by flooding.
Yeah.
And it wasn't from the ocean side, it was from the backwater side.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think we need to consider the vulnerability of Sunset Beach to flooding off the intercoastal
Mother
water.
Nature, it's going to hit a hard lick, as I say.
We have a huge buffer on the beach of the dunes that will take up a lot of storm surge.
Mhm.
We don't have that big a buffer on the backside. We've got the marshland, but the elevation of that is much
Yeah.
lower. So the benefit of the marshes is it dissipates the energy
Right,
in the
right.
stormwater.
Yeah.
So it's not as impactful when it gets to the occupied areas of the island. But are there any questions about this? So this is kind of an introductory explanation of it. I probably went much farther than Chad wanted me to, but there is one other part of this program for phase 1 and 2, and that's called a Planning Handbook. And this is available from the RCCP website that the DNR has. And if you want to know more about how phases 1 and 2 were done, this is the Bible for that. This is an excellent program. I think this is a world-class program for doing this kind of thing. So this was the guidebook everybody had to work with to get to where we're at. Background information. Okay. How we go forward, I think we should talk about that when we talk about subcommittees. If there's any other questions about the review on 6A, we can address those now.
I think this is really helpful. Thank you.
Next item is Sunset at Sunset planning for this fall. Chad, do you want to start
Yeah,
that?
I'll touch on this. October 1st, 2022 is a Saturday. It is the Sunset. The ERC, I know, John, you put in an application for 1 or 2 tables or booths. Staff will also have a booth there as well. And the planning implications of that need to start ramping up so we can start, especially providing. I think we talked briefly about this at the last meeting. I've got to reorder some recycling bags and some other things. There are some budget monetaries that are left over from the Earth Day Arbor Day event. I don't remember the count of bags offhand that we handed out, but we need to replenish those. So we need to start working on that. Probably need to have everything kind of finalized down by the August meeting, and then that way at the September meeting we can tweak it, so we've only got one more meeting in between then before that August meeting. So probably once we get through June and after the July 4th, I'll probably start meeting with a couple of y'all as we move forward to figuring out what this looks like and kind of going from there. But again, I can't stress enough that we probably need to have a very good draft of kind of an idea of what this will look like for this committee and in the involvement by the September or the August meeting. That way we have a month to tweak it in between then, because the September meeting, we will not have a meeting after that where we will be able to finalize things because of the October 1st date of this festival.
All right.
So it will be in the park this year, not in the mixed use district across the street or Sunset Village. Their staff is looking at what that implications look like. It will be a little bit more, I think, dense. than it
Cozy.
has been at
Cozy.
the last couple years. And we're also looking at parking and traffic flow ideas. We're potentially looking at taking a page kind of out of Southport's book of closing the road down from the roundabout down to the park to make that easily and accessible. And we're working on permission with DOT to do that and see what our options are there. So start thinking, especially as we get into the subcommittees. I think this is be a brief topic. Along with the Earth Day, Arbor Day one, because I think once we get through Sunset at Sunset in September, we'll go have an overview in October and then really start to plan the Earth Day, Arbor Day event for next year, starting in October and revamping that. So the other thing to keep in mind with this is, and thing for me to keep in mind as well, is the budget is getting ready to switch over from this past year to this year. So I'll have to get with the finance department to see how that money rolls over and stuff like
Ted,
that.
that is the first Saturday in October. I had a brain fade. Is that the first Saturday in October?
Right.
Okay. The other thing, I'm on the Keep Brunswick County Beautiful committee, and I have not talked with Mickey Bozeman about this at all. If they wanted to participate, who is the point of contact for Sunset at Sunset?
John, if I'm not mistaken, Karen Joseph would be
Carrie Joseph.
the point of
Carrie.
contact.
Karen.
Karen Joseph.
KARE.
I'll send you her contact.
Okay.
Um,
Great.
I can
There's a
figure
lot
that
of
out.
information on the internet, on the Sunset at Sunset.
Okay. Website. Thank you.
Find the Sunset at Sunset
Website.
website.
Okay.
You can download the application form, and I would suggest if they want to do that, they do that quickly,
Okay.
because there will be limits to the number of exhibits
Yeah.
they allow.
Well, I've got to say that Ms. Bozeman was very pleased with the Earth Day, Arbor Day event a couple months ago. She thought it was good. She made a lot of contact. She helped us with a lot of answers to a lot of questions we didn't have on recycling and solid waste and all of that stuff. She probably will have some freebie giveaway bags too if she comes. But she's a good resource, Mickey Bozeman.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
And she works real hard at her job.
She's a go-getter.
Yeah. Are there any other things to talk about? I know Rich has a lot of questions and ideas.
So for the Sunset at Sunset, can we ask for an additional budget to purchase other items? I think you said like $600 or $700 left over. That should be enough, I guess.
Yeah, what items? I mean, we can sit down and go over the items.
So there's a program, I would like if I could get on a subcommittee for the nature-based to, it's called Homegrown Parks. I don't know if you guys have heard of that yet. It's about planting natives, replacing natives, replacing exotic plants with native plants. One neighbor, the other neighbor, whatever. So it's what we can do for our community, immediate, low cost, high return. But if we could do it at the town, anyway, if we can hand out plants, native plants at those two events that we're doing, and sign up on it.
Well, I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to volunteer Ms. Seaman with the.
Right.
I think we
Ask the
should
gardeners,
leave this. We're coming up to the ERC subcommittee
Yeah.
structuring, and I think
Right,
we should
yeah.
leave it for that.
So-
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Because we
to-
haven't even decided what Sunset at Sunset, what we'll be doing there or anything
Right.
else.
So if we could do a sign up or enter sign up of who's interested at this event at the Sunset, who's interested in the homegrown parks. So we have some contact, because right now we did that plant swap at Earth Day, and it was me and one other guy brought plants in. Only two of us. We brought in 60 or 70 plants, and it was our first year. But if we can spread that around, so if I know that we can't do a whole lot countywide, statewide, nationwide, but if we can change Sunset Beach and let it spread out from there. Again, it's just what you do in your backyard, what you ask your neighbors to do. So anyway, a budget, and fall is the best time to put out perennials, natives.
Well, I
So
think-
anyway, extra budget for that.
I think our thoughts have always been that we take the excess budget we had left over from Earth Day, and we'd use that for sunset at sunset. Is that right, Jen?
Well,
Say that one more time.
We take the excess or the unused budget from Earth Day and we'd use it for sunset.
Yeah, that was the plan.
does that money roll over till the next budget year?
Yeah, that's what I've got to figure out. I just
Okay.
realized that we did that. And
And
Kinda-
if, when you talk to budget, if we could budget for both events instead of a budget for one event and then budget for the next, if we could ask for a budget for the year, I guess an annual
yeah,
budget.
and that's kind of what we ended up doing without doing, because we ended up having the money in that allotted budget left over, and
Okay.
I know we talked as Rich and John, who I worked with a lot with that to help with the Earth Day Arbor Day preparations and stuff like that, is to whatever was money was left over, kind of use that toward sunset at sunset, and then when we get back to October, it's toward the end of the year, as we get probably somewhere between November and December, go back to the council and budget for that again. Maybe it needs to get to the point where next year we budget just for Earth Day Arbor Day, and then also during budget season I budget in a line item through the planning department for an Earth Day Arbor Day sunset at sunset, so it goes from calendar year to calendar year and not get interrupted in the middle. So
Okay.
that's something we can formality figure out. So
Yeah, I know you're on top of that, so I just wanted to.
somewhat,
there.
yeah. I just realized that there's a budget calendar switch over in the middle of this, so I'll have to talk to the finance director to see what all that looks like.
All right, so we'll talk about that next month. Then. Is there anything else for the we need to address now about sunset at
I
sunset?
think the sunset at sunset, I think Candace kind of hit on that. It's like, talk about the sunset at sunset briefly, talk about Earth Day Arbor Day briefly, which I've already touched on. But basically in the subcommittee, start kind of getting through that specifically. And I think that also revolves around the times that we will be set up, because I know this is not our event. John, I'll let you go into that when we get there, to how many actual tables or booth we'll have. So I know we probably won't have one per subcommittee. I know we submitted in an application last time. So figuring out that kind of parameter is key as to this as well.
Right. Well, after the last meeting, I did two things. One is I filled out and sent to Chad the sunset at sunset application, and you've processed that, right?
Send it to, did you send it to Karen?
Send it to you.
All right, we'll need to talk about that one.
It's somewhere.
It's somewhere.
The question, one of the questions with that is that there's a fee that goes with the application. I didn't know
That's right.
if the town would do that or if there was some waiver of that for the
Okay.
town, because it is a town event.
Correct.
The Earth Day Arbor Day 2023, I also filled out a form and submitted it for to reserve the space, the park for us next year. And I guess I'd like, I'll have to talk to Sindai about that just to confirm that that's been done. But we did follow up on both of those things.
And just to kind of be very brief on that, is I am now working with administration staff to look at temporary and special events as a town-wide thing. Till it's to look at seeing what other, it's kind of contradicting, because you have the Unified Development Ordinance, you have the General Code. Well, both the UDO and the General Code talk about special and temporary events, which becomes problematic when you look at enforcement, because they both can be contradicting of each other, which is not good. So staff is looking at cleaning that up, and hopefully we'll be taking some sort of an idea to the council in July to eventually go to planning board through the fall. and to clean that up. So there probably will be not much changes to temporary and special events, but this would fall under that temporary and special event category, that will have a kind of a central set of rules to follow and application process and stuff like that, that hopefully the UDO administrator will be handling and seeing through and stuff like that.
Okay. So we need to find out more about that.
Mhm.
Okay, the next item is new business subcommittee structure. One of the reasons that we asked for the committee to be increased from 5 to 7 people was so that we could create 3 subcommittees, and that the 3 subcommittees of 2 people, and that the 7th person on the committee could roam around and work with them in a more productive manner. Because of public meeting laws, we have a quorum of 4 when we have 4 people together. So we can have up to 3 people meet without a quorum being created. Previously, with 5 people on the committee, we had 3 people meet outside of a monthly meeting. We had a quorum situation, and that wasn't allowed. So when we had our subcommittees, we had 2 people working independently, and they would bring their work products to the meeting. Now we can have subcommittees of 3 people. But the thought always was that we'd have at least 3 2-person committees, and then we could have a 3rd person come in to support that. In my mind, that allowed me as the chairman to kind of go around and work with people at the subcommittee level to answer questions or provide support as required. You guys have been through this before.
What are the subcommittees you're envisioning?
Okay. Well, we've always had the recycling. I think we need to have a climate change. And there is 3rd committee that Rich and I have talked about. We don't really know what to call it, but it's the nature-based improvements around the community, gardening,
Trees.
doing things to enhance the environment of Sunset Beach. Rich has been calling it nature-based.
It seems to fit the government's
So we can,
direction.
I mean, with the climate change, we have nature-based solutions, which could be a little bit confusing, but they do go hand in hand.
Where would you put the RCCP type work?
Okay, well, that's an excellent question. Now, when the council has declared that the ERC should become part of the community action team, I think that meant everybody on the council, on the committee. So we're all part of the community action team. But I think we could have a
But we're also all part of climate change and recycling and everything else, and the subcommittee just brings in those reports, and
Right.
then the whole committee is updated, and we all discuss, okay, that looks like a good idea, let's go forward, or whatever. So I'm worried that if you don't have more specifically a committee looking at those issues, a subcommittee or something, that you're going to lose track.
That kind of was my thinking.
And I'm wondering about recycling, if that could be combined under something, so it's not a standalone anymore, because we've kind of, as Don and I have looked at it, there's things as far as the town goes that, it seems like we're not able to push forward. For instance, having the town mandate that we recycle. From everything that I'm hearing in the year that I've been working with Don on, it's like the town's already looked at that several times. They're not willing to do that.
Well,
So then it leaves us with this education position, which I think is important, and I don't want to lose sight of it, but I don't know that you need a two-person subcommittee to work on how do you educate. And could that fall somewhere else?
well, you just touched on something I was going to mention. I think we've moved the needle about as far as we can. I say, Mr. Stephen and I, still need an education advocate, one or two people out there promoting this so it doesn't get lost in the whole thing. And we've done a lot of work, but we've done probably all we can do in some cases, if that makes any sense. I'm a little concerned now, after I say that, this nature-based subcommittees do to me, what would be their purpose? I would like to see have a statement of purpose in a sentence or two as to what they envision themselves doing, or what this committee sees them doing, so that it doesn't become so muddled that they wind up doing a little bit of everything but not really doing anything, if that makes any sense. Make any sense at all? No.
You have concerns. You have concerns, right? Yeah.
and I'm not against it at all. It's just maybe it needs to be tweaked and fine-tuned and massaged and thought about a little bit.
John and I have discussed this for about a week now.
Okay.
So I think I gave him maybe 100 different items
Yeah.
that need to be with the subcommittee.
Yeah.
Need to be pared down.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
agree with Candace also. So if with the recycling, you know how I feel about recycling, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
I
I
think
know.
it's critical, and I don't want to lose sight. And it's not like I think we've done everything we can. I think but we're at a place of, maybe like what would be the next focus?
Yeah.
Are we going to be like Myrtle Beach or North Myrtle or which
North
town
Myrtle,
John
yeah.
said no
Ban
plastic
the
bags?
bags, right?
Yeah.
So if you guys, with the committee or the recycling, if you're at 2 events 6 months apart to promote your recycling
Right.
or reduction or
Right.
reusing, and then there's a national recycling day also, maybe
Yeah.
there's a statewide recycling, to promote those programs
Yeah.
as part of the
Right.
Earth Day event or as part of the Sunset at Sunset.
To maybe incorporate it somewhere.
Incorporated into one.
Yeah,
of
I
those.
don't want to
Yeah.
lose sight, because I think recycling is really important, but I don't know that it needs the attention of a subcommittee anymore.
Right.
You can have it one person.
If we could do it somewhere else.
One person subcommittee. The other thing, we talk about all these subcommittees now, which is good. I think we have to keep in mind that somewhere down the way, we may need to develop another subcommittee to look at a particular issue that just pops up out of nowhere. I don't know that it will, but who knows what the council is going to suggest, or we find out from the public that, hey, we need to be addressing this. I don't have no idea what that would be.
RCCP.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
no,
things
I don't
come
know.
up.
I don't know.
When I think about what you're talking about with nature-based solutions, that kind of goes along with your Keep America Beautiful part that you want Sunset Beach to be involved in.
Well,
and I could see where that would fall in there, because how are you going to beautify it? I agree with you, Rich. We should be, and the more, as I'm getting into my master gardening education
Mode.
further, I think that's so important. We look at what we're losing. You look at the invasive species that are coming in, and some of the surrounding areas, the things that they're telling developers and builders, you can't plant this junk in the landscape anymore. And maybe it's something where we need to look at some of the town's ordinances.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot.
You
I mean, at risk of stating the obvious, there's a lot to this. I don't mean to, and I'm glad that you two have thought about this, because there's a lot for me to get my hands around.
Well,
But yeah, and maybe the first thing that subcommittee does is take a look at these issues and say, how do we wrap this in and define something?
And so I've been doing that for
Yeah.
a while.
Good.
And not just this.
Clearly, you've been thinking about this,
And
because that's
there's-
part of what drove Arbor Day and Earth Day.
Oh, right, exactly. And there is it's about a 3-year project. I mentioned this to John. It's called Homegrown National Parks.
Uh-huh.
We don't have to go to a national park that's isolated in Montana, let's say.
Right.
Mhm.
because they are not doing anything for our species way out there. So to do a national, not a national park, not designated by anyone, but for the town or the neighborhood, the HOA, to take on as many neighborhoods who want to add natives to their yard, if it's sponsored, promoted, assisted by labor, whatever, or if we give out plants at birthday.
Well,
Anyway, that's
we don't want to go to Yellowstone. It got washed away, didn't it?
yeah.
Right. My hope was today we would discuss this. We would let everybody express their ideas,
Right.
and we're doing that.
Yeah.
Rich and I have this constant dialogue going between us. It's excellent. I mean, Steve, one of the things we have here is a group of very diverse experiences and skills, very complementary of each other. And we challenge each other, and that's good. A big part of what we do is education. We are really not very action-oriented, except in what we should be doing to educate people and advise the council and staff on what we think needs to be worked on. I think we've done a lot in recycling area. We've raised the flag about mandatory recycling. That's not the pleasure of the council.
Right.
And I can debate it either way.
Well,
But it is what it is. Now we need to be educating people, and we've done a lot of that. The Earth Day, Arbor Day was a big educational event.
Right.
We've talked about improving the website, and we're waiting for the town to go through their website improvement process, and then we can come in and we can build on
Right.
that, provide information for the local community about recycling. This community has a very high number of people that do their own recycling. They don't need curbside recycling. They use the recycling facilities available. And when you talk to people, the people we talk to, they all support recycling. But there's a lot of people that don't recycle that we need to try to educate.
You have the challenge of when the tourists and out of town, the vacationers come, who may not be aware of those options.
Right. So in my mind, that's what this subcommittee would work on doing, is really working on the educational aspects of recycling.
And I agree. It's something you have to do all the time. And I think one of the challenges we had with Earth Day several months ago was, in some ways, we were preaching to the converted, because those folks had a interest in Earth Day. Otherwise, they probably would not have been there. Now, we may have reached a few folks that really didn't know that much about it, and hopefully we did. I know that I met a couple people that asked them how they found out about it. They lived in Ocean Isle. Said, "Oh, we saw it in the paper, so we come over and learn something about it." But education has to go on all the time, all the time.
Yeah, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. And the intention certainly wouldn't be that we wouldn't, both at Sunset and Earth Day, to continue to provide education. I just don't know that there's enough work for a subcommittee to do anymore with that.
Take a third.
And maybe it should fall somewhere else.
I don't know where else that would be.
Well, a one-person committee, a subcommittee. I don't know.
It doesn't need,
Yeah.
if it's going to remain a committee, it can remain a committee. I'm just trying to figure out how. It seems to me like we've got more work that we're trying to accomplish, and adding one, or adding these two committees.
Well,
Okay, well, maybe it doesn't have to be a two-person committee.
no.
Yeah.
But I think we need to identify recycling education as priority activity.
Or just how about just education? And recycling is one of the things that falls under that.
Well, then we can go back to nature-based. I mind if we had a program about Keep Sunset Beach Beautiful.
Mhm.
You got Keep America Beautiful, you got
Right.
Keep Brunswick County Beautiful. But what we're talking about here, what Rich has been talking about,
Well,
That was for
thing
Chad. That was
is to keep Sunset
Call me
Beach
Steve.
beautiful. Trees, flowers,
landscaping, yeah.
landscaping,
thing,
all
yeah.
kinds of stuff like
Well,
that.
it also goes along with climate change because one of the things we hear constantly through the county extension office is as this area is getting warmer and the climate's changing, we're becoming more like a Florida type climate, and maybe we should be advising people, if you look 10 years down the road, this kind of tree that you're planting, it's not going to live anymore. You're going to be taking it down.
Um,
And we need to be looking at here's what we see coming.
Yeah, plant orange trees. You'll be
You know what? There was a guy that gave a
sorry.
serious talk about this area is going to be ripe for citrus in
Right.
10 years.
yeah.
It's
Well-
yeah. But natives should be the oaks, #1 tree in the world,
Yeah.
should be able to handle that, right? The magnolias.
And get
Yeah, some of our natives are going to be good. I know you were looking at dogwoods. It's one of the ones they're worried about that may not survive.
Yeah, that's an understory tree.
what is it
Well,
back?
and it's been one of the issues here is most people don't use it as understory, but when you have a small lot, it's hard to have a big enough tree that you're going to have
Right.
an
Yeah.
understory.
Yeah. You're right.
Is
Find,
the breadth
find
of
another
pear-
tree. Find another
Is
tree.
it the Bradford pear that tree
Yeah.
that people say you don't
Calorie
want?
pears, right?
What? Yeah.
Calorie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think those are ones that most places are not allowing anymore.
The weak.
And it may be something that is part of our education.
Yeah.
You know, here's things that you should really
Yeah.
avoid planting.
So
That's
how would you
just one of
promote, if we could talk about that, how would you promote education with reducing, recycling, environmental, nature-based? What do you see with that as a committee for education or outreach committee?
Maybe it's more outreach, whatever outreach and education where some of those things come up. It doesn't say there shouldn't be a nature-based thing. I think that's great, but then maybe that's something that committee can say, hey, we're working on all these things. Can you help us to disseminate it or something like that, so that you're not tied up in too
Collaborate
many.
between committees, right?
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just suggesting, I'm trying to figure out how do we accomplish the work we need to do.
Yeah, and there's a lot.
Yeah.
I agree.
Should that be our priority? Should that be a
Number
priority at the same level as climate change? Should we push recycling down to a lower level?
I guess I think I would. I think it should be part of things, but if you're going to really look at what we need to do with climate change, and maybe that's where the RCCP work falls, is under climate change, that's a lot of work.
Well, it is, and I think
I mean, that's a lot of work, and there's not, I guess, I mean, there's a lot of information and there's a lot of resources out there, and I don't think most of us are as familiar with it, and I think we're all pretty familiar with recycling. So it's an easier one to fold under something.
well, we're
I
volunteers.
don't know. Maybe I'm the only person thinking this way.
No, I tend to agree. We're volunteers for one thing. It might be useful for us to go back and reread, at least me reread the statement of purpose or marching orders, if you will, that were given by the council to us. It's a 2 or 3 page
Yeah,
thing.
the
to refresh ourselves.
that would be good.
Yeah.
I do that frequently to try to keep myself.
Yeah.
Focused. Yeah. What are we doing? Yeah.
Rain
We
is-
are an advisory committee, and our primary purpose is to do research and figure out
Right.
what's going on and what should be done.
Well, the other thing, I guess it might be useful for us to kind of step back and say, are we doing the things we really need to be doing? Take a very big picture and look at it. Are we doing the things we really need to be doing? And are we missing some big picture things?
Okay, well,
Anyway.
Well, I think it's one of the things I appreciate that Rich has kind of brought to the ERC is looking at, these are areas kind of what I would say outside the box of
Right.
when I came in and you were talking about here's the things we're working on. there's more things we should be working on, and we've been kind of confining ourselves. And I'm worried about recycling doing that to us, that we're missing other opportunities. And I've enjoyed working on recycling, and it's something I expect I'll continue to focus on, but I think it could be done
Okay,
differently.
so when you think about that, what do you think are the things we're missing?
I think there's probably more with stormwater things, and that's probably part of what falls under
RCCP.
the RCCP.
Right.
Some of it under nature-based solutions, because I was really interested in rain gardens when we came. I'm so glad we've got one out here now that we can point to as an example. But when I look at education, along with doing native plants, that's something that I would see as a big part of those two things going together. We should be encouraging people to do these things that are in their yards, in their communities, that assist and keep the pollutants, keep the chemicals from going into our water. Do what we can there. So there's other things that I think we could be looking at that are already in our charter, but we've never really had time to do.
Well, we sort of dived head first into recycling
Right.
last year because the RCCP Community Action Team really picked up the ball and ran with it on climate change.
Right.
Now that ball's
It's
being
coming back.
passed off to us.
Right.
Well,
And I guess that's why I'm asking, where's the best use of our resources?
Okay. When you talk about climate change and we talk about keeping Sunset Beach beautiful, those are very big items.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to think about how we want to break that down. I don't know that we're going to reach any conclusions today.
well, I'm just going to point out that, of course, this is your first meeting, but Miss Millman is not here, and I
Steve's
have
not here. Steve will
And
be here.
Steve's
Steve's not here. Yeah, so I feel like I feel certainly useful to get their perspective, and now that Steve's had at least one meeting to get sort of get your hands around this a little bit, come back at the next meeting with some thoughts. I know this is all new. But your perspective, obviously, with marine fisheries and so forth, is valuable to me anyway. So,
Can I ask if, or I will ask, instead of waiting this meeting to introduce it, next meeting to discuss it, the following month to actually submit or make committees, can we send our suggestions and maybe a vote to the chair, to the secretary, can we do that in advance of next? So John will be prepared to direct and say, this is our committees and these are people who volunteered for that. Are we allowed to do that?
So here's what I need to weigh in on a couple things. One, I think there needs to be some kind of, somewhere in one of these committees, there needs to be embedded some 2 people to 3 people, depending on who the hybrid is, of events. I can't tell you the value of having John, Steve, and Rich when it came to Earth Day, Arbor Day.
right,
As far as having that flowed.
right.
So when it comes to that, there needs to be some kind of that embedded,
Right.
or a separate one that deals with events, maybe twice a year, maybe
So you mean
3
generic events, not just specific?
I'm talking about Earth Day, Arbor Day, Sunset at Sunset.
Okay.
Because again, I cannot tell you as a staff liaison, I could not have pulled that off in the short amount of time we did if it wasn't for the 3 people I had spoke with
Right.
on a daily to weekly basis leading up to Earth Day, Arbor Day. I know that y'all gave me a lot of credit, but that credit cannot go as far as it did if I did not have the 3 of y'all helping me on that, because y'all were really the ones that kept that going. I just helped purchase stuff and get it to where it was supposed to be and more organized staffed where it needed to be. The RCCP was formed of the planning board along with John Corbett, who was our council member, and John Farrell, who was the chairman of this board. The council voted and accepted John Corbett as the liaison, and this board voted and accepted John Farrell as the liaison. We are in phase 3 of that, and phase 4 will be mostly probably staff and working with the engineer to put the boots on the ground. I'm not saying we don't need to be resilient, but we're through phases 1 and through. They're done. That's where a lot of the legwork done. We relied on the planning board along with the 2 additional members to finish that. And then a lot of it comes down to grant funding. I've taken kind of a step back away from that because it's more of a project-based kind of initiative now, as far as a planning role, because I have a lot of other different things I've got to get accomplished in the next couple of years to go move forward with that. But that's mainly moved into Lisa, our town administrator, and Dustin, our public works director, mainly because it comes down to funding and going straight to council for that to be able to get permission for funding of grants and all that. That's where a lot of that, 90% of that revolves in right now. The RCCP, I know that town, Lisa and staff or council has approved this board along with Corbett and Larkin, who Pete Larkin is our planning board chair, to work on. But honestly, it's going to be a committee called on as they're needed. And I've talked a lot at least about that. So yes, be resilient. I think RCC specifically is going to be called on when they're needed. But as far as a subcommittee just for that, we kind of already have that in place. But the working on to make sure that Candace, Don, Rich, Steve, Mia's ideas are important or embedded into that, or is another thing for me to figure out with Lisa and Dustin on making sure that those voices do not go unheard. So that's what I'm kind of taking from that. I would suggest moving forward is putting this as number 1 kind of priority on our next one, along with Sunset at the July ERC meeting. What I would do is over the next couple weeks, I normally try to put these packets out the Friday before our meeting, and I normally sit down with the chair and the vice chair between Wednesday and Friday going into that meeting. So what I would do is over the next couple weeks, spend some time thinking about it, submit 2 to 4 subcommittee ideas with a brief description of them, and submit them. Just email them to me directly. You don't have to hit reply all. Send them to me directly. I will compose them and put them all in a document. That way I can be very detailed in our packet coming up. If you look at some of our planning board packets, they're 100 to 150 pages
Don't do that
a
to
piece.
me.
I will not do that to y'all unless y'all have 100 to 150 papers of dialogue to go along with this. But if each one of you wanted to submit 2 to 4 subcommittee ideas with a 1 or 2 sentence paragraph at tops on the description and kind of a vision to move forward, I can collaborate them all down. If there's any likeness, I can kind of look at them and compare, but I can list them all for you that way. And the thing about this, you don't have to be, I know John had the vision of being 3 subcommittee teams, but it's kind of, let's say Steve are 1, Rich and John are 1, Don and Candace are 1. Well, Candace and Steve can also be in 1. Don and Rich can also be in 1. So you can have more than 3, and you have, as long as you don't have more than 3 people attending in these little pods, you can create that. So I think that's another key and another idea to think in mind. So if you'll send me that, and I'll send an email out to make sure. Is it Mila and Steve Levine are embedded into that. If you'll just do that over the next couple of weeks, what the submittals I'll get, I will provide to you in detail going into the July ERC meeting, and I will get those to you where early enough where you can put some thoughts into them to where, hey, I'd like to serve in this role, and you can do 1, you do 2, do however many you want to, and it probably needs to all be kind of voted on to where each person needs to, kind of go into. So vote on each subcommittee and kind of go from there. And then we can incorporate that into, we'll make that as old business number 1, and then old business number 2 will be sunset at sunset. So then we can get the subcommittees out of the way and then move into what sunset at sunset kind of looks like.
That sounds good to me. I like that idea.
That way it keeps this committee out of, it's not purgatory or trouble, but it keeps us legal.
Well, the other thing, I don't want us to bite off more than we can chew. In other words, let's don't be so ambitious we wind up with way too much and get frustrated.
Well, I think that kind of depends on where I was going with the other part of the second part of that.
Yeah.
If you don't want to, I don't think there's a requirement to serve on any subcommittee. That's up to you.
Yeah.
If you wanted to serve on one, if you wanted to try to serve on all 5, that is your calendar and your, expertise and where you want to go. I
like the idea that you
can have
serve
5
on
or
more than
6
one
of them.
because some things may overlap.
Sure.
Yeah. And as long as you don't have more than 3 people attending the pods, we'll call them, kind of, so that keeps you out of trouble. And kind of go from there. I can't say that I can promise you all the time for each one and y'all attend to, but I can promise you the space availability if we have it, to be able to use town hall as a meeting space as well. So
And the coffee's free here.
coffee is free.
Good.
To pick up on what Candace said before, when you come up with your list of subcommittees, I think what I want to start with myself is, okay, these are the action items the committee should be working on.
I like that idea.
And then we split those up into groups, and then people can choose, oh, I want to work on these areas, and I don't particularly want to work on the other things, or whatever. Whatever your priorities are to work on. If we could come up with maybe the top 6 activities that we would like the ERC to be working on going forward, and you identify which of those areas you're most interested in, then I think the subcommittees will fall out of that.
There's a process, and Chad, I cannot remember what this is called, where you have people, you give people a little postcard, little index card. They write down their 3 or 4 things they think are important. You go around the room and everybody identifies one. You put them on a piece of poster board. Then you give everybody dots to vote on those. What's that called?
I have no idea.
You don't know?
No.
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
There are several management tools that
Yeah,
accomplish that, so that you can
It's a democratic way of
you kind of generate the ideas and then prioritize.
Exactly. Let me think
7
on
people,
that.
7 votes.
You
And
only
then
get so
pick
many
the top-
dots.
Well, no, you get if you get so many, like if we're going to have a top 3 or a top
Right.
5 or whatever, you get that many dots, but 7 people each have them, and you put them, and
Right.
you can rank projects that way.
Yeah, it's very useful. It's democratic, and the thing it does is if you got a loudmouth, they don't sway the vote because they only have as many votes as you have.
Yeah.
So let me think. It's very
Well,
effective.
we can see if we need something like that
Yeah.
next time around.
Just a
Okay,
thought.
so
Anyway.
we'll all think about it, write down our thoughts.
Funnel ideas through
We'll
chat.
give it to Chad.
Okay.
And then
He'll
it'll
make-
be an
he'll make
item
sense
for
out of
next
it.
month. So we won't be starting from scratch.
Okay.
But,
In the meantime, I think Chad's right. What about sunset at sunset? Because I'm afraid, and you're right, if we wait till next meeting for that, we'll be too far behind.
I mean, I would have 0 problem. I mean, thinking about the events part, if we actually do a subcommittee per each event, I think that would actually work. So, Earth Day, Arbor Day had subcommittee I really worked with Rich and Steve Levine, and then in Steve's absence, I worked with John Farrell and Rich. If y'all wanted to go ahead and nominate 2 to 3 people, I would say John needs to be one of those, and then 2 other people to work with the sunset at sunset, just to keep John as the chair on that, but also 2 other people working with sunset at sunset. That way y'all can already start kind of getting the ball rolling. But I will say this, is as easy as that is to do, it also needs to make sure that, if we have depending on how many booths we have, and I'll go just double check with all that with Lisa what that kind of looks at. Because last year we had one, and again, you have to keep in mind, you know, you're staggered. It's not like we had each subcommittee had a booth at the Earth Day Arbor Day. I think you'll be sharing 1 or 2 spaces at the most.
Last year we shared with the town, and we had just elected, that was our trial with recycling to see
Right.
how that would work.
So
And it tended to work well.
it becomes one of those things where, you know, you're not going to be, I don't recommend we're all out there from 8 to 8. So breaking that
I
up
think
into
we weren't
time
allowed.
slots.
It was considered a quorum.
Yeah, and I need to just
Because-
double check that, but also, you know, if you break it up into
And I think isn't that even one of the reasons we broke it up a little more this time, was because it would be
Set aside,
considered a
yeah.
quorum if there was too many of us
yeah,
at
so
any
the other
one
thing
table.
is to breaking it up in, you know, 2 to 3 hour servings. So,
So, so we haven't been blocked out. You think Karen?
I don't think
Joseph
we've been
has us?
blocked out.
Okay.
I'll just double check that. I've already talked to Lisa about all that as well. So, you know, if we keep it to where you serve in 2 hour increments, you're out there from, you know, 8 to 10, 10 to
Set up and-
12,
set up
12
and
to
break
2.
down,
And,
right,
and I think setup and breakdown's a little bit different because this is not our event. I think a lot of it's kind of,
Okay.
I don't know, I have to look and see what that looks like too. So, all right.
So were you looking for, I could help John
I'd be-
with Sun's.
I'd be willing to help with that.
So, Candace, Rich, and John,
Sunset at Sunset.
That's fine with me. Is
make a
there-
motion. Do we need? I think we need to vote on that just to be.
Okay, well, I would move that we at least have a temporary subcommittee to work on,
Not a
to work on
temporary.
this
We
year.
have a Sunset at Sunset
Subcommittee.
subcommittee with you and I and Rich.
Okay.
Is there a second to that?
A second.
All in favor?
All right.
Cool.
Aye.
All right.
Okay. And the other ones we'll do next month.
Yep.
Good. All right. I think we're at the end.
I wanted to bring up one more thing. It's not really an agenda item, but a suggestion that since we got 2 new members, it might be good if Lisa or perhaps even Chad would give a little summary of how the open meeting law works so we don't get in trouble inadvertently. I know we've talked about it a little bit.
I can bring in Lisa briefly
Yeah.
for that at the next meeting and
That'd
just
be great.
yeah.
Okay.
And
Steve
if there's any
Hines,
other kind of things.
Mhm.
I think you're probably well educated in public meeting laws from New York.
Well, federal.
Yeah.
federal
Yeah.
public meeting law.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big one. That's the big one we have to make sure we're staying in
Right.
out of violation of is the open meeting law. Everything else kind of moves through that. So that's the biggest one. So
Well,
Right,
you
so
know,
with Mila here next month,
yeah.
probably be a good thing.
So we're
How about the
transparent and there's not this sense that the public doesn't know what we're doing.
Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion. We adjourn the meeting today.
I'll second
Second.
that. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
John?